Hi, everyone. It's Jason.Mata with American Pacific Mortgage. Today, we want to talk a little bit about refinancing. Really, when is the right time to refinance? There's a lot going on in the world right now. We have some challenges economically. In fact, I'd encourage you don't take a look at your 401k this week. Unfortunately, we had 4 days of negative activity in the Dow market. And so, today we have a little bit of a bounce back, but certainly as we hear negative economic news, we start thinking, okay, what's that not only doing to my 401k, but what's it doing to interest rates? So typically interest rates work inversely to what's going on with economic news. And so as we start considering refinancing, that's something we want to kind of take a closer look at. Especially some of our clients that purchased over the last couple years, maybe back in 2023 when rates elevated to 7.5, even 8% levels. So now as we start inching lower in interest rates, refinance opportunities become apparent. And really what refinancing means is I'm taking my existing balance that's at, let's say, 7.5%. I'm essentially trying to refinance that down to a lower rate to help create more capacity in my budget, essentially, right? So if my monthly payment's at $3,000 a month and by refinancing I drop to $2,500, that means I'm saving myself $500 per month. And that's a big deal for most of our households that we service in homeownership. And we have a system called Rate Watch. We're essentially kind of targeting rates for our existing clients to make sure refinancing makes sense. So in that same scenario, if I have 7.5% interest rate today, it probably makes most sense for me to consider refinancing when I reach at least about a 6.5% rate as or maybe my target rate. And the reason why we say that is because in refinancing, there's a return on investment that we would want you to see because ultimately there are going to be closing costs when you decide to refinance a home. I always recommend clients budget anywhere between $2,000 to $4,000 in closing costs between title and escrow fees, some of the local government charges, as well as lender fees. So when we think more about those closing costs, we're going to compare those to savings. So for example, if I'm saving myself $300 a month and my closing costs are $3,000, my return on investment or break even is 10 months. And so that would actually fit in our model of considering refinancing. Usually I would want a client to break even in those cost investments in 10 to 12 months. So as we're thinking more about refinancing, you're probably going to be getting some calls from lenders encouraging you to refinance. But I would also at the same time ask you to kind of step back a little bit because, refinancing doesn't always make sense for some households, especially if you're getting a minimal reduction in interest rate. If it's only a 0.25% or a 0.5% reduction rate, probably doesn't fit the model of that return on investment that I just shared with you about a minute ago. So, I would say get connected with us. Let's talk a little bit about your existing situation. Where are you currently at from a rate perspective? What does today's markets look like for you? And can it create enough savings to have refinancing make sense for you and your family? And we may say, yeah, let's go for it. Let's go for the refinance now. We may say, let's wait a little bit longer because we're seeing some, rate projections to go a little bit lower, or maybe it's something we need to put back on the shelf for the next year or 2 years and maybe wait for our rate watch system to take hold. So, that's kind of how we think a little bit about refinancing. One is there at least about a 1% reduction in interest rate? Can we get a break even in our closing costs versus savings and ultimately create enough of capacity in my housing budget to have that refinance make good economic sense for us? Well, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about what refinancing means to you and your family, and maybe just want to run some calculations on what a savings plan might look like for you in that refinance, we'd encourage you to get connected with us by visiting us at mortgageeducate.com.